a fan. However, I must ask you questions from another vantage point of a Nessia to keep the conversation balanced and healthy. Okay, so right at the outset, I admit that.
Absolutely. Somebody asked me once, "Sir, are any questions off limits?" I said, that's not the issue. I hope no answers are off limits. The problem comes there.
This craving for appreciation from home, but
I'm the official sari selector at home.
Okay.
My wife is forbidden to buy sari.
Okay.
She asked me why. I said they are for my pleasure.
Okay.
So I should be the one selecting them.
That's so sweet. I think husbands and many
does she choose your
suits? Inspired.
Does she choose your suits?
Yes, all two of them.
So, I don't know where to begin. So, just let me begin from the last conversation live, which I heard, where somebody called you angry young man of Indian TV. It was not a long while ago. But then I was thinking that now this angry young man is transforming into a smiling young man, at least on TV debates. But if one were to read your book, and I'm sure everybody knows which book I'm talking about, I'm currently talking about Hindus in Hindu Rashtra, 8th class citizens and victims of state-sanctioned apartheid. So when one is reading the book, one is continuously ping-ponging between, the very, sometimes very evocative passages and sometimes very provocative passages. So, what is the objective of this book, and what are you trying to say through this book is my first question.
Right. First of all, thank you so much to the organizers, to Redefining for inviting me for this wonderful event. I thoroughly enjoyed the previous discussion. And thank you if somebody, you quoted somebody called me first an angry young man and then a smiling young man. I noticed the young was constant in this but I'm very happy for Rahul Gandhi to be the youth icon. So I have no intention of replacing him.
It doesn't go beyond to other topics. Why do you ask? Okay.
No, but the specific question that you asked. To be honest, I think this book, even I wasn't aware of many of the things that are in this book as late as 2.5 years ago. And for most of my life, I actually thought that every Indian at some point or the other has faced discrimination. It is class agnostic, it is religion agnostic, it is ideology agnostic. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, Buddhist, Jain, rich, poor, people who have a car, who don't, who have a house, who don't, everyone has faced discrimination. But then I started to discover that it is only Hindus where the discrimination seems to be constitutionally, legally, socially, educationally sanctioned. And not just sanctioned, stamped authoritatively by none other than the Supreme Court. And that kind of struck me. I said, look, it's no longer a question of being discriminated against. If the rules are the same for every person in the society and somebody is exploiting those rules, if on the other hand, the laws that have been formulated by the Constitution, our Constituent Assembly, are unjust or they are draconian, so somebody is not just misusing them, they are using them. For example, I don't say that the sedition law is being misused. The law is so draconian that it is being used. So it is unfair in its formulation itself. But it is, as I said, community, religion, class, creed, caste, agnostic. So there one can say, well, if Hindus are being discriminated, then yes, Muslims also are, Sikhs also are, Christians also are. But then slowly I started to learn about the things that specifically Hindus are going through. And I was aghast that in a lot of those discriminations, if I may use the plural here, they seem to have been constitutionally sanctioned. The discriminations have reached the altar of, let us say, the parliament or the judiciary, and they seem to have been ignored. So the first chapter, or I think it's the second chapter, it really hit me. So out of the 8 reasons that I give, half of them I did not even know of as late as 2 years ago, and it's only through the amazing work done by Vishnu Jain ji or some Hindu temple activists, T.R. Ramesh ji, J. Sai Deepak, and Vikram Sampath, so many other stalwarts, that I got to know of many of those things, but a few I did. And I, in addition to a billion others, was silent and saw through it. And one of the most glaring things that, as I was writing it, it hit me was that are there German refugees in Germany? The answer is no. Are there American refugees in America? Brits being refugees in Britain? So why are there 7 lakh Hindu refugees in Hindustan or India? That struck me as odd. Not only have those Kashmiri Hindus, they were driven away through clear-cut religious and Islamist extremism. We not only cushioned it, we, over the subsequent 30 years, we normalized it. And that is odd. That can only happen if there is constitution and legal sanction. Now, constitutional sanction you can understand because the most hypocritical creed or the most double-speaking creed you can think of is a politician. I have absolutely no hope in any politician because their first job is to win, and they will win at all costs. So that's not the issue for me. What pained me was that the Supreme Court, as late as 2019, almost 30 years after the exile and the murder and the Kashmiri Hindu genocide happened, refused to reopen the cases of criminal atrocities that were committed in 1990 against Kashmiri Hindus. And the reason it gave was too much time has elapsed. This is the Supreme Court saying it. And 6 months after it said it, it decided to constitute and order an SIT against the Sikh genocide that happened 7 years before the Kashmiri Hindu genocide. So, and this is the Supreme Court. Now, clearly, something is amiss. This has got nothing to do with religion, Hindu, Muslim, this, that, all what you will say. It's got everything to do with justice and injustice. And that was the genesis of this. This book that, look, hang on, this is not about, and I am a Darwinian atheist, I don't believe in God. For me, I just believe in justice and injustice. And here I saw that was the first of the things, and then so many others follow. I don't know how much time we have, so I don't want to take away time from your questions. But that was the genesis of the book.
So, just inferring from what you said just now, so do you think that, what about your faith in Indian judiciary, or is it against a particular presiding judge, or is it in general you feel that the entire judiciary has somewhere been, has maintained a certain kind of attitudes towards a certain community?
No, actually I wouldn't say that. And I'm not just saying this because I've just escaped criminal conviction. There was a contempt of court against me for standing up for somebody's free speech. That person apologized unconditionally. I refused to do so. And JSI fought for me and we won. So what I say now, I'm just saying this, I think it's just, it's a mix of a lot of things. We've allowed the judiciary to, if I can use the word, it's been used by the judges before, so I don't mind, to rot. And if you look at the data, they are so scary, that it's not just that the wheels of justice, as they say, are grinding slowly. They're not just grinding slowly, they've come to a halt. 50 million cases are pending. 50 million. It would take, at the current pace, 325 years for the Indian judiciary to clear the backlog. And if you look at 200,000 cases are pending against POCSO rape offences. More than 1 lakh cases are as old as 35 years old. There is collegium system There are so many, 22% of all judicial positions are lying vacant. More than 30% of High Court position judges are lying vacant. I mean, what's going on here? As I say, that perhaps we were a banana republic ever since we became a republic. I mean, there is no other way to explain this. Nobody seems to be doing anything about it. But given that, and we know the other pillars of democracy, they've all crumbled more than the judiciary. So let me also throw in this. And I'm not just saying it to escape another criminal, conviction by the court, contempt. But out of all the four pillars, the one that is still tottering and still standing, a lot of plaster has come off the pillar, but it's still judiciary. But how soon will it crumble completely? That's the question. So the issue is not that there are undue favors against a particular community. There's no doubt about it. But when you see the double speak, when you see the double standards, as was obvious in not just once but twice, it refused to open the cases against Kashmiri Hindu twice, in a span of 4 years, and it opens cases of atrocities against a genocide that happened 7 years before. So clearly, time has not elapsed in one instance, and time has elapsed in the other. Same are the cases with hate speeches. The Supreme Court comes down very hard on some instances which it considers are hate speech, and is completely silent on cases that are actually hate speech, if you look at the textbook definition of hate speech. So there are double standards, and that is what I think we as a society must fight against. That's what I'm saying.
So agreeing with you that justice delayed is justice denied. However, I can't refrain myself from quoting some critics who argue that your book selectively presents data or anecdotes to support a predetermined narrative, or that your book overlooks or downplays instances of discrimination against religious minorities in India. How would you respond to this criticism?
Give me proof. I myself am looking for proof. And as I said, there are people who meet me at airports and say, sir, we are 9th class now. Sir, we are 10th class now. Hey, there's another discrimination. So these 8 are watertight. And as I said, every Indian is discriminated against, but these are instances where only the Hindus. Give me instances where constitutionally, legally, Muslims or any other community have been discriminated against. I'll be more than happy, because as a scientist, the first thing you learn is to look at facts, is to look at prior precedents. In fact, I would say it's not a question of Muslims being discriminated against. Muslims as a community are being appeased even now under this government. For example, why should there be a Ministry of Minority Affairs? Number one. Number two, why should it offer interest-free loans to Waqf board that has the authority to set up any shops on Waqf land? Interest-free loans. So this government is also spending tens of thousands of crores over a period of years for appeasement. Where is the discrimination? I want anybody in the audience. This book has sold 63,000 copies in 6 months. So it's been 6 months. Please tell me an instance where legally and constitutionally Muslims have been discriminated against. This book is about discrimination against constitution legal against Hindus. Give me a example.
So some of the people here who may not be familiar with your work, why don't you give a brief summary or synopsis of Hindus in Hindu Rashtra?
Yeah, so the title itself comes from, it's a parodic title, because as all of us know, ever since Modi came to power, suddenly, fascist Hindu Rashtra was born. Before 2014, everything was hunky-dory, India was a garden of Eden. We had the best utilities, we had the best cricket team in the world, everything was superb. So only after Modi came, everything started turning to rot, and then we've been governed by fascists. We're living in a totalitarian Hindu Rashtra state. So the title is, what is the condition of Hindus in this so-called Hindu Rashtra? So that is what this book aims to tell you. To begin with, I gave you the example of Kashmiri refugees. I can give you the example of, for example, this is important. When we say we are a secular country, what do we mean by it? if you look at the textbook definition of secularism, it means there has to be 100% total uh, difference, demarcation, a line between church and state. State must have nothing to do with religion, and religion must have nothing to do with state. I am for a secular state. I am. So when many people say the word secularism should be removed from our preamble, which was incidentally inserted by Mrs. Indira Gandhi during the emergency, it was absent from Ambedkar's constitution. I am for uh, the word secularism remaining. But the question is, we are not a secular state. That is the question. The question is not whether we should be. Of course, we should be secular. But why are a billion Indians? Why have they just accepted what the politicians are telling them, that we are not secular? If we were secular, why are the state governments and the central governments controlling 100,000 temples? Why are they controlling, setting rent on land, lakhs of acres of land that is controlled by temples? Why? Is this what a secular state is supposed to do? These are obvious questions that weren't known to me or millions of others, And to give you one example, T.R. Ramesh, he could go to jail any moment. He's been, fighting for the state giving up control over Hindu temples and lands. And he says in Tamil Nadu alone, all the temple land that is controlled by the government, you should be getting 6,000 crores as rent every year. The government gets 58 crores, not even 1%. Now, all that money is of belonging to Hindu temples. If this is the case for places of worship of other religion, why are Hindus being discriminated? And it's, as I said, it was the Congress that started this discrimination back in the 1950s, 54, 59. But then what explains the BJP continuing with that discrimination? So this is party agnostic. This is religion agnostic. This is community agnostic. Only Hindus are bearing the brunt.
Is it discrimination or appeasement?
This is rampant discrimination against the Hindus. And I'll tell you the long-term effects of this are not very obvious now. To give you an example, so the money that the churches earn, the money that the Muslims through the mosques earn, the Sikhs, they are putting that money back in making thousands of schools, hospitals, and so many orphanages, so many things that are important for community, that help out people. And as a result of those schools and hospitals, many poor Hindus are being asked to, sometimes coercively, sometimes covertly, to leave the fold of Hinduism and become Muslims or Christians or something, because the incentives are there. Now imagine if the Hindu temples had those billions of dollars in their hands, they would be making hundreds of thousands of those schools and hospitals. So a Hindu family that is destitute, and I have absolutely nothing against a destitute family, say that, look, I am being offered, school for my children, for my ill wife or my husband, hospitalization, if I convert. Why wouldn't I? I would. Saving a life is more important. But all that thing is not being given to Hindu temples, Hindus. Now that is rampant discrimination, and that is happening under this government as well.
Why do you think it's happening?
Well, it's a cash cow. You made a fool out of people. You've done it since independence. Before independence, the Brits started it, Endowment Act, and it continues because it's a cash cow. And you can throw in a few things like, for example, the Kashi corridor was made, and it went on for about 6 months. That, look, this is a Hindutvavadi government. It's made a corridor. It's beautified the Kashi Vishwanath temple. That corridor is worth 350 crores. So much money is being spent. 350 crore is half monthly hundi collection of Tirupati. If you leave Tirupati and its finances to the temple, it would be able to make hundreds of such corridors. But more than that is the philosophical question: why should private property be in government's hands? And I don't understand this. All those people who advocate that, let them come out and say that the churches and the mosques and the gurdwara should also be under government control. They don't say that. So it is immediately obvious where the discrimination is.
So just now you mentioned secularism, and you are secular, and you said that you wish that we were secular. So the concept of secularism is often debated in the context of Indian society. How do you define secularism, and how does it relate to the issues you have highlighted regarding the treatment of Hindus?
Yeah, so we are not secular, and I say it at every opportunity that I get with the definition of secular. We are plural. So, I don't see why people and politicians are offended by being defined as plural. You're working for every religion, you're not secular. We have half a dozen constitutional articles and amendments that make us not secular. We have, for example, the state control of Hindu temples is just one example. You had Hajj subsidy, you still have it. You have the state government as well as center setting salaries for Maulvis and priests. You have state-sanctioned iftar parties. You have so many other things. When opponents say, well, doesn't the state also take care of Hindu festivals or Kumbh Mela? Well, that's a law and order situation, so the state is by definition allowed to do it. But it's an imbalance because it is only the Hindus that are paying the state billions of dollars. So if the state is working a little bit, throwing a little bit towards some crumbs towards the Hindus, it's just crumbs. The state, the Hindus can turn around and say that don't give us this, just leave, relinquish control. So that is not an argument to be made. I would aspire to be secular because secular means there is no discrimination at all, there is no appeasement at all. Why shouldn't we be secular? I think we should be, but we are not. So that's the way it goes.
So, isn't it semantics calling secular or plural? How would it be different if it were to be plural or secular?
So, secular means, as I said, the state is not controlling any places of worship. Secular means the state is not setting salaries for priests and Maulvis or giving Hajj subsidies. Secular means the state and the politicians and the governments are not promising free pilgrimages to senior citizens. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And it's not just that the Aam Aadmi Party or the Congress or the Samajwadi Party promise free pilgrimages to, Ayodhya or to Ajmer, depending upon, what the politicians, their bent of mind. The BJP promised the Christians of Nagaland, if they voted for BJP, free pilgrimage to Jerusalem. This is the Hindu nationalist Hindutva government. How is that secularism? That is our taxpayers' money. That is pluralism, if you can say, because every person belonging to every religion is being promised some, and that's freebie. You vote for me, have a free trip to Jerusalem or to Ayodhya or to Kashi or to Mathura. That's the difference.
So, considering there are questions, okay.
Have I offended anyone till now? Because
no. Anyone? After the session, we will.
Anyone offended? Please feel free to ask.
We will have an open mic after this.
Yes, absolutely. And let me put in a caveat here. I'm always only invited once to any gathering.
Okay. Considering the ever-evolving political and social landscape in India, how do you anticipate the issues highlighted in your book evolving in the future? Are there emerging socio-political trends or movements that you believe will shape the status of Hindus in Indian society? And alongside this, I'm also asking, additionally, how can proactive measures be taken to address systematic discrimination which you have talked about and ensure the equitable treatment of all religious communities in this country?
That's a great question. Let me also begin to answer it by...
3 questions.
Yes, I know. So to give you an example, the Supreme Court came up with its Sabrimala judgment that negated centuries-old custom. That was a request by the deity. By the way, in Hinduism, the Hindu god, the deity is a living deity.
Yes, Pran Pratishtha, that is why.
Yes, so that is why Hindu temples have to pay income tax.
Yeah.
Mosques and churches, they don't pay income tax,
Yes.
because it's a living deity, and that So there are many Ayappa temples where this bar wasn't there. Only in this where the deity was celibate, and it said those women who were menstruating from a particular age bracket should not visit the temple. So this kind of bar wasn't there in other Ayappa, Shabrimala Ayappa temples, and B, there are many Hindu temples where men are not allowed. Now, how can it be discriminatory if in some Hindu temples men are not allowed, in some Hindu temples women are not allowed? If women were not allowed per se, then yes, you can argue that it is discrimination. But in any case, the Supreme Court adjudicated that women must be allowed. It went against a Hindu custom. But I want to ask this: why has the Supreme Court not adjudicated that women Catholics can be ordained as priests in India? So, if you're a woman and you're a Catholic, you cannot be ordained as a priest. Is this not discrimination? Men can be. It is discrimination in Islam as well, when women are not allowed in the sanctum sanctorum of many mosques. The High Court threw out that PIA. These are double standards, you see. So that is what this book aims to, not just because it's not up to me to correct it, but the fact of the matter is that somebody sooner or later has to look at it. Now, to come back to the other question that you asked, is there social awakening? Now, I'm afraid it's what point it is of you waking someone if that person realizes the wrong and then do nothing about it. You might as well be asleep, So that's why the book ends at a very kind of despondent note. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, the last chapter, if I'm not mistaken, the hallmark of a democracy is, forget about the laws and the rules or wonderful constitution that is egalitarian, that works for fraternity. The hallmark is that any citizen of the country should be able to knock at the court to demand justice. That for me describes what democracy is. And 1 billion Hindus can't through this Places of Worship Act. If I believe that, through historical injustice, the most sacred temple of mine was demolished and I want it restored, reclaimed, I cannot approach the courts. As a Hindu, I am barred. And it's not just that. It's that the Supreme Court has ratified it in its 2019 Ayodhya judgment. How is that democracy? I can understand, I go to the court and the judges say, well, we deny you this. That's absolutely fine by me. So if the Ayodhya judgment had gone 5-0 against the Hindus, that is justice meted out. You may disagree with it. You may like to change it, as was changed in the Shah Banu thing when the Supreme Court verdict was overturned. That's another matter. I'm against that. But the fact of the matter is, at least the judges adjudicated on it. At least there was a semblance of justice being done. Out here, you can't even approach the courts. So there has to be a social, and this thing about, let's not worry about all the demolished Hindu temples, whatever the number may be, some say 1800, some say 40,000. Let's just throw in, give them 3. चलो काशी मथुरा के एक और फेंक देते, चलो 4. ये धनिया मिर्ची है क्या? Is that how justice works? To give you an analogy, if 30,000 Kashmiri Hindus were criminally acted against, would you just say, let's just give justice to 3 families? Let's forget about 29,997. That's not how justice works. The principle of justice is it can be applied universally, and it must be. Otherwise, it's not justice; it's injustice. This people have to understand, and everything has to be done legally. It's the left that belongs in doing things illegally because let's take it, rest control. If it believes that historical injustice has been done like was done by King Leopold in Congo, millions were killed. Illegally, it brought down the statue of King Leopold. Illegally. It didn't worry about whether it should be brought down legally or not. I'm saying legally things have to be demanded for. That's the difference.
So, this is such a thought-provoking discussion, insightful discussion with Dr. Anand Ranganathan. His book came and just stirred the national consciousness and reverberated through, I think, every heart and every mind. And, everybody is thinking in their own way. Some agree with you, some do not agree with you. But the idea of introducing this segment is that we talk about books that made a difference, and it made a huge difference to every thinking individual. Some may like you, some may not like you, but I'm sure.
I prefer people who don't like me. I'm married to one.
But it touched every thinking individual, and I'm sure there are so many hands that I can see are fluttering to be raised.
Please.
And I'm going to accommodate you all. So please, you have a mic, please. Yeah.
You start.
So, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, my name is Ritu,
Hello.
and I'm Vinita's friend. And I have other interests also. I work as a dean for a university in Noida for journalism and mass communication department. I want to tell you, cool down. Nothing is going to change in this country. Nothing is going to change in this country. The reason being, I'll tell you, there's no unity among Hindus. There's no unity. Now, please understand, since I'm in the mass communication department, there's no unity in this country among the Hindus, because what you said, it's like selling dhania and mirchi. Yes, it is like selling dhania and mirchi. I'm a strong supporter of Modi ji, but I do write to him that Modi ji, you just cannot give us, you cannot give me candy of 3 temples or 4 temples. It's like giving candy to a small child. You have to actually do something. The whole ecosystem in this country is in rut. The education system in this country is in rut. Okay, I say the education system till the schooling, the 12th grade is wonderful, but once you come to the university, I'm not talking about government universities, because most of the students now are going to the private universities, because 90%, every child is not getting 95, 96%. The problem lies in the education system. We love to post the reels, we love to talk, we love to tell people only on Instagram and social media. Even now, after this discussion, we'll go back home, we'll have our pastries and coffee, we'll go back home and sleep. That's the end of the story. What you say, I really agree with you. And my whole support to you. I really want to invite you now in my university, because you need to do the awakening to the students, young students. They are the future of the country, because 100 years later, Hindus, where are Hindus going to be 100 years down the lane in this country? We really don't know what's going to happen to me or to the future generation. That is the thing. And I really want to congratulate you.
Thank you very much. Very kind. May I please reply, because it's very important that I do. While you've been very gracious saying that you agree with me, may I be equally gracious that I profoundly disagree with you.
I love that.
I'll give you the reason. You see, to ask for unity, to get something done that is morally and ethically right, per se, I find it very objectionable. I find it offensive. I find it patronizing. I'm not commenting on you. I'm saying millions say what you have. That unless we are united, unless we are 1 billion strong, we will not be able to get this done. I disagree. We need one conscientious judge. And that is why I say, we as a society need to decide, should the judge be a product of the society, or should the society be a product of the judge?
Yes.
That's the most important question. Now you see, in America, you had 5 judges sitting, deliberating and outlawing illegality for homosexuals getting married. To have said that let's all the people, Americans, unite, have a referendum. What you are suggesting, unity leads to referendum. Now referendums are very dangerous things. Referendums sometimes completely ignore. They are emotional, they can ignore expertise, they can ignore science. And America is rife with such things. We know about abortion rights and everything. I don't want to go into that.
I know.
So the fact of the matter is, it is for people to sit and say this is morally and ethically right. And what I loved about the Ayodhya judgment was that out of the 5 judges, 1 was Muslim. So it is not important for 1 billion Hindus to unite and clamor for something. It is for one man to stand up and fight for what is morally and ethically right.
I have a small question. Jay Sai Deepak fought your case.
Yes.
Are you friends?
Yes, very much so. So I would like to believe.
So enhance your friendship, you'll need him more.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. It was a pleasure hearing you live. My name is Kasturi. I am a first year history honors student at Kamala Nehru College.
Yeah.
Sir, in your book, you discuss how selective criticism of Hindu festivals and practices may lead to Hindus disliking their own tradition.
Yes.
So, while you attribute this to the judiciary, my question is more on the broader societal impact. So, to provide you an instance, on the day of Ram Mandir Pran Pratishtha ceremony, many on my Instagram feed reposted the preamble as a form of protest. Whilst I'm all for free speech, I quickly saw that it turned into a trend overshadowing like personal beliefs. So in a cancel culture driven society, which has more leanings towards, I would arguably state, minority appeasement, how would you suggest addressing the certain group mentality to rather empower individuals to authentically voice out their beliefs?
Well, it's a great question because there is no set answer for it, and there is no, because you cannot completely negate human frailties and emotions. Now, for the last 100 years, country after country and experiment after experiment has shown that communism has failed. Wherever communism has prospered, that nation has been destroyed. If scientists do one thing and one thing right, it is that they never repeat the failed experiment. But we've seen communism still exists. Sitaram Yechuri still, professes that communism is the greatest ideology. You still have, although now Nota gets more votes than communists, but I'm from JNU, so I should know. So you cannot negate it. You will always have humans who will go by emotions or by illogic or by lack of rationality. To say that all that should disappear is totally looking at it the wrong way. There would be people who would object to Ram Mandir being consecrated, but that is emotional, that is to negate what is a civilizational correction of a historical injustice. And I've said this before, if a Muslim were to come up and say that, look, this mosque was demolished by a Hindu king and I want to reclaim it, I've said it publicly, I would go with him to the court to demand that happen. It is not a matter of religion, it's a matter of our civilization, which is what civilizations are, and that is why they last more than empires do. We worry about the injustices that happened to our ancestors. And I was there on the day of the consecration in Ayodhya. I was seeing on the streets at the crossroads 15-year-old, 18-year-old kids, students jumping with joy. Why were they doing it? They had no connection whatsoever, apparently, to what happened 500 years ago. But something connected them. That is what civilization is. That is why we must fight for every historical injustice to be corrected. It is religion agnostic.
We have students from Jamia, and I would very much appreciate if some questions
Please.
were to be asked from there.
Hi.
Hello, sir. My name is Ashur Hussain, and I'm pursuing a bachelor's in technology from Jamia Ahmedabad. And I always listen to your podcasts on YouTube, and my favorite one is that Ranveer Allahabadi, where you went. So I'm a great admirer. So, sir, you just said that Hindus are refugees in their own land, Hindustan, and you also talked about the injustice being done to Kashmiri Hindus who have still not given justice yet. So, with your permission, I would also like to add the injustice and atrocities to Muslims as well as Hindus in 2002 and to the Sikhs in 1980s. And sir, I completely agree with you. But my question is, what's the solution to this problem? What should we as Indians, what should we as students do to make Indians feel safe in their own land? Like, बच्चे को बुखार है, पता है. You made us aware क्यों बुखार है. But बुखार कैसे ठीक करें? What steps should be taken by government, by students, by other social activists to make Indians feel in their own land? And so I think that day we can call ourselves Bharat Bhagya Vidhata, according to me.
Wonderfully said, and I agree with you. I don't think we disagree.
Yes.
Because let me add to what you said. And I said it as initial opening remarks as well, that every community has been discriminated against. When you talked about 2002, sure, the ensuing justice it has failed so many people who suffered during those riots, so many, and who suffered during the train burning as well. I mean, Bilkis Banu comes to, but for every Bilkis Banu, there is another Hindu woman who has terribly suffered because of the injustice done to her, right? The fact of the matter is, when I was talking about the Kashmiri Hindus, I gave you in-your-face discrimination, where cases against Sikhs that happened 7 years before cases against Hindus did, they were reopened. And cases against Hindus won. So, you know, that's the, so I don't think we are in disagreement, and I think things would improve and change when we try and remove injustice wherever it happens. Wherever it happens, because it is the most sacrosanct, it is the greatest invention of man. Please remember, I mean, some scientific invention is not the greatest invention. Justice is. Which other living being conducts justice? And if we don't conduct it properly, then we are failing whatever semblance of pride we may have in the human species.
You were raising your hands, you had.
Yes, ma'am.
Please.
Ma'am, I think we humans are, it's a human nature to, discriminate against things.
Awesome.
Because we have created a society, we want everyone to be perfect, so we mock them. When I was a kid, we used to discriminate between the one who eat vegetarian. We made two groups, vegetarian, non-vegetarian. The vegetarians stay with vegetarian and non-vegetarians with non. I think we, as a human being, it's a psychology to discriminate about things. As a society, we fail, right? We are
So I mean, if I can add to, I don't think that is discrimination. I mean, if that is particular preference.
Stop
If
about classification.
Yeah, so that's classification is-
Society in classes.
Yeah. If you, I mean, if for example, few vegetarians want to hang out and eat meals with fellow vegetarians, for whatever the reasons, smell or the taste or something.
They created different groups, two groups. Like we used to, discriminate when we were kids.
Yeah,
Because
so
it's
I think the correct definition would be classification, grouping.
Classification, A mocking B, B mocking A. So it's a
Yes.
level playing field.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Anand, it has been a great listening to you. Of course,
Thanks.
we would see your podcast, but today I saw a very different perspective of you. I've seen a lot of ups and downs. I was in Ahmedabad in 2002, saw both the sides of the pie. And I'm very hopeful that India will change, and it has been changing for the positives. My only suggestions to you and advice to you, you should pass your book to all the law students, whoever do law. Maybe what I strongly feel, at least there'll be some thinking cap on their head. Even if it you have to give it free of cost. Because that is why when a student reads it, maybe tomorrow he becomes at a good position, he may be able to change those laws. This is what I personally perceive. Very well said, and hats off to you.
Thank you.
My name is Arun Rawat.
Next session is fundraising.
One hand was there. Last question. Give me a minute. Just
I'm so,
keep
are we
the
running out of time? Because I
hands.
wanted to give an example to Arun. Is that possible? Okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, my name is Arun
Yes.
Rawat.
Yes.
I was with some of the large corporates of India.
That's right. Did they buy electoral bonds? That's another question. No, but you see, as I say, now the narrative for the last 10 years has been democracy is in danger, fascism, Hindu Rashtra, all that stuff. Now, when does democracy come in danger? We analyze something, we go back, you have a reductionist approach and keep going back, like almost to the beginning of Big Bang. One of the biggest dangers to democracy is that the politicians and the political parties are being bought over with money, corruption, and they are formulating policies that are preferred by the people who paid them. Now, that is why I say that democracy has been in danger in our country ever since we became a democracy. And there is so much to be said about the courts meting out justice. But ultimately, over and above that is our parliament that can negate the justice given by the court. And I'll give you a glaring example, sir. And it is a tragedy that the youngsters and I'm not including myself in that group, we were unaware of this until a few, thank you, very gracious. To give you this example, the High Court convicted the BJP, not just castigated, convicted the BJP of FCRA violations in getting money donations from a company. Conviction carried a punishment prison sentence to the BJP head, whoever at that point of time was 2015-16. Almost overnight, the BJP amended the FCRA Act going back to the era of emergency on the floor of the House, rendering the conviction toothless. Now I ask you, in any civilized country, democracy, if such a thing was done by the ruling dispensation, what do you think the opposition party would have done? It would have poured on to the streets. It would have set fire to whatever, anarchy, and closed down the whole country, demanding resignation of the Prime Minister down to God knows what. Did you see this happen? No, you didn't. Nothing of that sort happened. Why? Because the High Court, in addition to convicting the BJP, had also convicted the Congress of the same offence. And the BJP amended the FCRA Act with the support of the Congress. So now I ask you, the democracy is in danger through what? Through the people whose job it is to check the government that it does not remove democracy. These are the same people who help the government in scuttle the court, the judiciary, and the democracy. So what is the solution then? I have no solution to that. That's the problem. Sorry to end on a despondent note, but unless there is someone higher than the parliament, which there isn't clearly, there's no solution.
Ma'am, may I?
Yeah, last
I
question
need
of
to
the
say
day.
something. I don't have a question to ask from you, sir. So what I
Introduce yourself, please.
Okay, ma'am. I'm Danish Anand from Jamia Hamdard. I'm currently pursuing BLLB third year right now. But on a special note, I don't want to indulge any argument, and I'm not cross over any words of you. But what I mean to say that why we use the temple as a deity or the place of only worshipping. If you want to uplift the society, if you want to tackle the or shoot the hurdles and the backwardness of the society, why we are not operating temples as a institutions? So that's my concern.
Sure.
That is only my concern. We do have temples like Balaji. We have temples like Tata, Discord, Tata, Disc, and everything. We have numerous fundraising from the globe, right? So we have that much potential. So we don't have to use the temples only the place of worshipping and the deity. We have to use like as a social institution just to tackle down any issue. Apart from if we are walking down on the streets, we can find a temple within the 10 kilometer nearby, right? But what was the issue, what was the use of that temple? Why can't that temple and the people of that arena or the people of the community can raise some concerning issue of issues like uneducation, issues like medication help, issues like some unwanted deaths of anyone who is like residing overside.
Yeah, I think I got your question.
Yes, sir.
Just to answer it very quickly, traditionally over thousands of years, that was the role of the temple. The temple was the center of not just Hindu but Bharat civilization. Temple, and if you read, for example, Sanjeev Sanya's book, The Ocean of Churn, you will realize that temples were actually center for governance. They not only brought people together, they were centers for defense, economics, finance, everything. And even now, it's a private entity. So it is not for the government or the state to dictate to how a temple should act. But even if you were to ignore that, even if you were to ignore the fact that so many temples give so much, thousands of crores in altruistic means, they are setting up organizations, even if you ignore the fact that tens of thousands or lakhs of crores that could be given by the temples are being, wrenched away by the state. That's another matter. The question is, if you look at, let me give you another glaring data, and this would make it very apparent. A city of Paris attracts 44 million foreign tourists. Paris, okay? India attracts 11 million, okay? Which is a quarter of what Paris attracts. But did you know this? While only 11 million foreign tourists or tourist trips are happening in India, 1600 million tourist trips are happening in India, more than the population of India. You know why that is? Because of religion. So when we talk of Ram Temple, saying why hasn't Ram Temple set up 10 schools, 10 hospitals, the fact of the matter is that Ram Temple alone has contributed lakhs of crores even now within a span of 2 months to the economy. Because as a tourist attraction, not just attraction, as a pilgrimage. So it might not appear at the surface of it, but temples are a great source of economic strength and well-being for the country.
Is your question answered?
Thank you. Please. No, I do not play basketball. I'm not tall enough. And brown men can't jump.
Okay, while we are probably fighting the minority rights, we are saying minorities have more rights than us through constitution and everything, is there a possibility that in that fight somehow the secular fabric might just get a dent because you might introduce your temples and your Shankaracharyas and everything into the polity? The separation of church and state in the definition of secularism per se, we spoke of the state participating in the temples, but the temple participating back into the state is also a real danger. So while we are fighting the other side, it should not happen that your democracy takes a beating and some Panditji is sitting on top, the traditional.
Very wise question, I think.
Yes, but then democratically, how can you stop a priest? I mean, we have, Yogi Adityanath as an amazing example. He's won twice. And second time, he was the only chief minister in 35 years to have more than the population of Brazil is being governed by a priest.
But elected.
Yes,
but
that's what I mean.
I'm saying from the side, from the back door. The possibility of a back door.
But then there are laws to, you would have to give an example as if coercing politicians to do that.
I'm just saying, the founders of the constitution were trying to keep democracy alive, the election process alive,
yes,
and not let the priest to come in from the back door and guide you.
Can I reframe your question?
Yeah.
I think what he's trying to ask is, supposing they are brought in through a Rajya Sabha route and then later on given, is that what you are saying? And later on given political power?
See, earlier the Pope would guide, Pope was not elected, but the Pope would guide what the world would do, the Christian world would do. And that's what the Italians did. They put or rather the French did.
Yes.
They said the Pope can take a back seat.
Now I get what you say,
So
but then it's impossible to stop that. Because, I'll tell you why. Because even though I do not have a godman or a priest who I look up to and who would, I would gladly have him as my consigliere or counsel, almost every politician has, cutting across party lines. I mean, you've seen from Congress, from BJP, they would blindly accept the diktats of their gurus. Now, if such a thing were to happen, and the politician would make that decision, he is possibly not going to say that, look, I'm making this decision because my guru has told me so. The only recourse is for the parliament to say that, look, this is the wrong decision, we vote against it. But how can you stop the politician from making that decision?
I think we have to just put a stop to this session because a lot of entrepreneurs, I think they just walked out.
I'm so sorry.
No, not at all. And in fact, we will enjoy the conversation, but also I don't want them to be feeling left out. So, Dr. Anand, you can't say that you are not invited again. I assure you, you will be invited again. There are a lot of conversations and there are a lot of question answers that need to happen, and more so in the due course of time. And I really, really, really thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
For taking